Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of Thursday, February 16th. First, I'd like to, I must read a statement about attendance here. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting will be held with the option to attend by teleconference or in person. Members of the public may provide live public comment by submitting a speaker card prior to the start of the public comment on that item. Speakers may address the items that are not on the agenda during the oral communications portion of the meeting. Spoken comments via computer or a smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom app. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join meeting. ID is 965-6189-1491. When you wish to speak, click on the raise hand. To offer comments using a regular phone, call 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 965-6189-1491. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, hit 9 on your phone so we know that you wish to speak. So, call. Veronica, you want to do a call to order? Roll call.
Vice Chair Balte,
Present.
Board Member Chen,
Present.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Here.
and Board Member Thompson is absent. We have a quorum.
Are there any public comments? Not on the agenda?
No, I've not received any speaker cards and I don't see any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Are there agenda additions or deletions?
No, none.
Okay. How about city official reports? Jody.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? We're having some technical difficulties. We're getting IT down here, but none of these speakers are working. So
Okay. City official reports.
so just the transmittal of the ARB schedule. And hold on one second. So Board Member Thompson has a planned absence next week and, in 2 weeks on the March 2nd hearing. We have 2 items for the March 2nd hearing, 3001 El Camino Real project, the 129 unit affordable housing project, and Stanford Shopping Center facade change for Sushi Roku at Stanford Shopping Center. I believe we'll have 1 item on the March 16th hearing. We just heard about it's going to be related to SB 9 objective standards. So we are having planned meetings for both of the March hearings. New projects that came in include the 800 San Antonio Road project came in for a formal application. That's going to be a planned community zone change under the planned home zoning for a 76 unit 5-story residential building, and 16 of the units, which is I think 21% of the project, would be provided at below market rate. And varying income levels. 4 of them are low income, 7 would be very low income. And there was another Stanford Shopping Center project for some exterior improvements for our house, which is a retail store.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. So I note that the Antonio Road project is listed on our chart then here. And yeah, so that's an update. There are a couple of just corrections in the wording on here. You know, the project includes on 330, SB 330 application 3150 El Camino. This project consists of a 456,347 square foot apartment building, 171,433 square foot garage that extends to 84 feet in height.
That's correct.
The
That is correct.
garage extends 84?
No, not the garage. The project extends
Yeah,
to
maybe.
84.
Okay, it's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. Oh, no, it's saying the project includes these things and extends to 84 feet in height.
Just a
Yeah,
little
it
confusing.
could be worded a little bit better. I agree.
Okay, so,
We can fix that.
okay, so no problem really, just as long as it's understandable. The other project on San Antonio Road. So of the 16 units that you just mentioned, right? It states there 4 and 7 are going to be more supported. market rate.
To lower income, and then
Lower
the
income.
other units would be presumably to below market rate, which is below 120
Okay,
AMI.
the other ones,
Area
yeah.
median. income,
Okay,
yeah.
just, I figured that's what it was, yeah. Just wasn't mentioned as extremely below market rate, right? Okay, thank you. Let me get back to this page, back here, yeah. So that's the city official report. So we have a study session, 303,600 Middlefield Road, request for preliminary architectural review to construct a Palo Alto fire station floor. You can't hear me? Can you now? Yeah, okay, sorry. Proposed 7,800 square foot LEED silver single-story building would replace the existing 2,800 square foot single-story fire station. Environmental assessment, not a project. The formal application will be subject to SECA. Zoning district is PF, public facilities. For more information, contact Garrett Sauls, City of Palo Alto. First place, board members, have you visited the site?
Yes, I have visited the site yesterday.
Okay, Kendra,
I visited the site over the weekend.
okay. Not working. Maybe you want to move here? Oh, this one isn't working either. Having problems. Shout.
This one works. No.
Chair, can we actually take a 10-minute break and see if we can fix some of the microphone issues?
Yes.
Thank
Fine.
you.
business here. So we'll begin the project then again begin the hearing again. Everybody ready? Do we have a staff report here? Garrett, good morning.
Good morning, board members. My name is Garrett Sauls. I'm the project planner for this application. As Chair Hirsch had noted, this is the replacement building for the existing fire station number 4 at 3600 Middlefield Road. I'm going to give the presentation and then I'll present for the applicant while they have their discussion up at the microphone.
Thank you.
So go ahead and let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
No worries. Okay. So as I noted, this is for the project at 3600 Middlefield Road. The applicant is looking to replace the existing fire station number 4 with a new one. This property is located on the same property as the existing city's electric substation, which is kind of in this back area here. If you look on the site plan, you'll be able to see where that location of the existing transformers are for the city substation. It's also bounded by the Covenant Presbyterian Church, the Little League, as well as Mitchell Park. And it's at the corner of Middlefield and Middlefield Road and East Meadow Drive. As a part of the application, the applicant is looking to install 12 parking stalls, include 3 new emergency vehicle loading bays within the building, as well as to have an emergency generator on site. There are 14 trees that exist on the site, 10 of which they're looking to remove as a part of this application, and will be something that the board can certainly give feedback on, especially for ones that are located along the East Meadow Drive and Middlefield Road areas that are more visible. Most of them are removed in order to accommodate the development pushing towards the eastern side or the southeastern side of the border, which is separated by an existing fence between this building and the city's electric substation that again is on the same property. Currently, the standards that the building is trying to achieve is achieve a LEED Silver green building standard, which is one of the higher rankings available for LEED design and development. You can see here on the elevation drawings, I'll zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit more visible. You can see here, this is the elevation which will potentially front along Middlefield Road, which will have build off of the existing driveway that is facing towards Middlefield Road to have these 2 vehicle bays for emergency vehicles. You can see that the proposed design as they're showing will incorporate the wood porcelain tile cladding material as well as vertical cladding plaster material on the side of the building, as well as you can see this window storefront system that they have along here as well. This will be the elevation visible along East Meadow Drive. This elevation that you can see here on the top is the elevation looking inward from the property from Presbyterian Church looking towards the backside of the property. Again, you can see these 2 usable loading vehicle bays for emergency vehicles. There'll be a third storage bay for emergency vehicles as well that they're looking to incorporate into the project. But that would not have an outlet straight onto East Meadow Drive. Instead, it would be an outlet that they would back out onto and then be able to exit towards, sorry, I apologize. This would not have an outlet towards Middlefield Road, but would be able to back out and exit towards East Meadow Drive. And then this is the elevation looking from the city's existing electric substation, looking towards that property or looking towards this proposed building. Here are images from the application plan set that identify some of the details of the materials that are going to be used. The applicant has also brought materials which will be able to share or has already been shared with you, which identify the texture, the color, and the material to be used on the site. The 3 items that the applicant had wanted to get some additional information from the board or wanted the board to try to focus some of their comments on was about the massing of the building, the site planning that they're identifying and the plans that are provided, as well as the material selection to identify if there are any sort of other suggestions that the board has for their materials. And staff's recommendation is to review the application, provide any sort of comments. There is no formal action that's requested for the subcommittee or for the pre-screening item. And that concludes my presentation. We do have the applicant here who will also be available to make their presentation too.
Okay, would you, if it's sufficient, 3 minutes per person, does that work for your presentation? 10 minutes, you're allowed 10 minutes. So if you want to, you want the 10 minutes or do you need it or?
Please. Oh, yes, please.
Okay, then you can begin.
My name is Valerie Tam. I'm the project engineer with Public Works Engineering for the Fire Station 4 replacement project. I'm joined here with BRW Architecture, our consultants on the project designing the building. We have Chris Ford and Megan Zhang, and I'll go ahead and turn over the presentation to them.
Thank you, Valerie. Chris Ford, BRW Architects. Pleased to be here this morning and present some background on this exciting and important project, and looking forward to your comments. I'm going to be focusing at first on some background information about the site constraints, a little bit of background for your use on how the fire station will be operating, the operational sequence, and some of the key decisions that we made in working with the fire department and Public Works on how to arrange the site. I think it's important that you hear why we're doing what we're doing before we really start eliciting comments about any changes. Then I'm going to wrap up a little bit with introducing Megan Zhang, who's going to go over the materials, a little bit more about the design concepts. One of our co-designers is attending via Zoom and could be available to answer questions, but mostly he's interested in hearing your comments as well. Deputy Chief Lindsay may come down during the meeting. He's wrapping up something upstairs. So maybe if you had a particular question about the fire operations that I can't answer, then he certainly should be down here in time to help. So I'm going to go through just a few slides quickly to show what I said about the constraints and operations, and then I'll turn it over to Megan. Following that, we have a bigger version of the rendering that you've already got in your packet in case you wanted to drill in on any questions. So with that, Garrett, if we can go to the first slide. So what I'm showing here, what we've developed is the constraints. As it shows, the 2,800 square foot existing station is outlined, shown in gray. Directly behind that, towards the church, is the existing fuel tanks and pump. We do not want to move those, as you probably would understand. And then regarding the trees, we're keeping the street trees along Middlefield, and then we've got a liquid amber, sort of a signature large old tree. It needs some help. It needs some care, but we've designed the station to work around that. Regarding the traffic and flow, it's now the two apparatus bays point out onto Middlefield. It's critical that that remain the case. That, as Garrett mentioned, there's a third vehicle that would back in next to that. That's a reserve unit that doesn't have to call into duty when it's 911. But the two that are facing out to Middlefield, the fire department wants to maintain that as the primary direction to get out. The term that we use in fire apparatus for having a drive-through station is when they come home. So they're going to be coming home off of East Meadow. That driveway is already there. It also serves the substation. It'll serve as the return for the big apparatus. It'll serve as the access for the staff parking. The third point there, the arrow in the middle on East Meadow, that's also a driveway that we're proposing to alter slightly, but very little. That's an exit lane for vehicles, city vehicles that use the fuel station and exit. We're going to put that into double duty. It'll continue to be an exit for vehicles that have come to use the fueling station, but it'll also be an entrance and exit for visitors, as I'm going to show in the next couple of slides. So that's the overview of the constraints and what we wanted to remove and what we wanted to retain and development of the station. Next slide. So again, it's a fire station and the apparatus flow, safety, drive-through is the absolute critical component. Very simple diagram to show how the two primary apparatus, they're going to be bigger. The doors will be bigger. The station was built in the 50s and the apparatus is much larger and needs more height. So that's going to be replaced and that's the flow out on the middle field. And there, that arrow in the lower left, that's the coming back, returning. They return, clean up, refuel, fill the tanks, and then pull in to the bay and be ready to respond to the next call. Next slide. So Garrett did mention this has a community component, a community meeting room component. We have visitors that'll use those two parking spaces there shown in green. They'll then cross that the driveway that they just came in. And then the main door is going to be right on the corner. Megan's going to talk a little bit about the importance of having the entrance, the public entrance right there on the corner of East Meadow and Middlefield. Kind of what it is now, but it's a little bit hidden as you've seen on your visit. This is going to be much more expressed. That's the main way in for visitors, tours, students, people that need help or an emergency. The community room, meeting room is prominent along East Meadow, again, to project that open public face. And it has, if the meeting gets crowded, there's also a second way in and out that opens directly to the visitor parking. If it's a big meeting, like a night meeting or a club meeting, the thinking is that the parking wouldn't be in the staff area, it would be over in the parking lot in the park on the other side of the church. That's the community, that's the public side. Next slide. So the living quarters, again, a completely separate part of the station. It's pulled away as much as we can from the intersection, traffic noise and congestion. Living being, this is their home, one on shift. So in the purple is the kitchen dining area. Again, open light, but not too open, visually open to Middlefield, but having some upper light that Megan will address. And then in the back, as far in the back as we could, is the individual bunk rooms, bedrooms for sleeping, and then tucked in between those two is locker, restroom. There's what we call turnouts or PPE that's going to be part of the operation. But the main thing on the decision for the layout is to have that purple area be pulled away from Middlefield as much as possible. And then finally, next one, exercise, fitness, critical part of the well-being and readiness of the fire department. We have a combination of indoor aerobic equipment, stretching, weights that stay inside all the time, but pretty important as they have on Station 3 to be able to open up the doors, get fresh air, and do some of the larger, more fitness, like the ropes and the stretching. You can open the doors and do it outside. So part of the planning was to have the fitness area in the back, away from the day-to-day operations of the fire station, and then have it directly adjacent to some outdoor area for outdoor fitness and CrossFit type things. I think that concludes my background. Megan's going to jump up now and talk about the materials. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I think maybe wait on questions until Megan goes through. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Megan. So touching base a little about how we came to the 3D massing of the fire station. One of the items the fire department and the chiefs wanted was having this as a public safety beacon to serve the community. And second is keeping it pedestrian friendly. As you know, there is a Presbyterian church next door, as well as the Little League field. So we thought there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be coming around both sides of the street, down East Meadow and Middlefield. So having the apparatus bay being the main massing, sloping back towards the back of the station to give a better feel for pedestrian who's going to be using that back space. Because the church is so tall, we don't want to crowd that area. and having the two sides, the living side and the community side, to have a more flat, lower roof to help with pedestrian level with the kids coming through. Regarding materials, one main thing is the afterlife recyclability and durability. How is this going to be maintained by the fire station staff? And as well as the aesthetic that's going to fit with the surrounding context. Next slide. As you can see with the fire station, we'll be using porcelain exterior cladding, vertical cladding. So that's one of the samples there. It's very durable, is vandalism proof. It has a great afterlife recyclable content. The entire system is recyclable, as well as a 10-year warranty and 20-year warranty on fade. Another material we're proposing is the Vespa soffit. That is also a wood-like material. We're keeping the station more friendly with the wood, but not using actual wood, because wood is very hard to maintain and there's not going to be a lot of replacement. So the material choices are more geared towards that way. And that concludes my presentation. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, okay. First, we didn't have any questions of the staff report. So are there any questions of the staff? I can't hear you. Yeah, but we didn't have any questions of the staff at all. Are there any staff questions of the staff report? No, none. All right. Veronica, are there any public comments? Cards?
No, have not received any public comments in person or don't see any hands on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so board, do you have any questions for the consultant, for the consultant here?
Sure, if I could ask the applicant, please. I think I understand, but I wonder if you could clarify for me how the fire engines enter and leave the building. Specifically, if a fire engine had to go out and head north on Middlefield, how does that work?
You mean, they currently, right now, on staff is an ambulance, but in the past, there's been what's called a type 1 engine there, and they currently, I don't think they have direct control of the intersection, but as they pull out on the driveway and turn left, they have sensors on the rig that turn the signal in their direction. And that system will continue in place. So the type 1 engine, the primary engine, will probably be on the right-hand bay or the outer bay to make that sweep and respond either going north or south on Middlefield.
And did you explore the opposite, have the engines exit? Sometimes Middlefield gets a lot of traffic. I'm sorry, I meant East Meadow.
Onto East Meadow.
Yeah. What was your logic for rationale for choosing the way you have it?
Very beginning, we do a very extensive operations review with the fire department and representatives. That would be a question. I mean, thinking back to not only the legacy condition of what they're used to doing, but also the arrangement of the light, the driveway location. It really, one of the founding ideas was that it remain out on Middlefield.
Thank you for that response.
Thank you for your time and efforts. It would be quite helpful if there was a representative from the fire department here. Understandable. Perfect. All right. So part of the questions about the operation, day-to-day operation, we just want to make sure that this is something that has been gone over, I mean, I assume thoroughly with your team, with the architectural team, making sure that everybody's really feeling good about the process and procedure and what you guys have going on day to day what can stand to be changed and what can stand to stay the same. I agree with Commissioner Balte's concerns about coming out into Middlefield. That road can get quite congested at certain times of day. Now, this is the perfect opportunity to adjust that if needed. So we're not going to take that lightly, and we're not trying to be glib about the concept that that would be a major change to the site. But is that something that is being kept the same because it actually works better, or because that's just the way that it's been done?
As far as I know, it's, well, good morning, everybody. I'm
Good
Steve
morning.
Lindsay, Deputy Chief with Palo Alto Fire. As far as I know, we were exploring different options originally in the design, but they want to keep it that way due to access to Middlefield and the response times. It saves us a few seconds getting onto the main road versus going down East Meadow and then trying to go through that intersection. It also gives us a lot of options as far as going north or south from that pretty quickly. So,
Excellent.
and that's why the station has remained that way.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Again, just, health, safety, and every second matters. So we want to make sure that we're doing this the right way while we've got the opportunity to do so. For the 2 curb cuts on East Meadow, are those existing to remain? They're both existing to remain, but are they being adjusted? It looks like one of them's being widened. Is that accurate?
Yes, the middle one, the one between
Right.
the entrance to the substation and Middlefield is being widened because it's always been just an exit only for
Yeah.
vehicles that have just fueled, and that the barn door sliding fence, that's always closed. I don't think I've ever seen that open. It's really just open just to get the rigs out. So that'll always stay closed. But we wanted to meet the city standards to widen it slightly. In working on the preliminary discussions with staff, even talking to traffic, they brought up the fact that there might be some changes along East Meadow with bike lanes and less parking. We're looking forward to getting into the details, but they said generally, if you can widen that enough to be a standard ADA compliant visitor driveway, they would appreciate that. So
Perfect.
that was really the only change to the driveway on that side.
Perfect. And if we can pull up the vehicular flow chart with the green lines on it again, I'd love to just take one more look at that. Partially because it appears that this visitor parking, we've got the arrow, and I'm sorry, this is sort of a nitpicky graphic detail, but we've got on our sheet SD1, we've got an arrow coming out from that barn door, that barn gate. Yeah, if you zoom in a little bit there. Okay, we don't even have it shown on this one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And in fact, when we were doing this sort of introductory slide, we blocked out that arrow because that was left over from the topo where where the rigs would exit or the city vehicles would exit.
Sure.
Only in the case that they're using it for fueling. I don't know how often a non-fire engine comes and fuels and then wants to leave, but it would make the most sense that barn door fence would slide open. They'd pull out, not get it, before they get out into the road, then they'd close it behind them and exit. So
Yeah.
it's not a common flow. So that's why we blanked it out, because
Sure.
it's really not
just
very often.
I guess a comment would be just to clarify some of that. It looks like the curb cut, that center curb cut as we're calling it, it's got in and outflow, but
Yeah.
from that barn gate, is it only exterior or is it both ways as well? So just having a little clarification, the graphics, very simple.
Yeah.
And then additionally, looking at this graphic here, we've got that third bay that's sort of your reserve engine.
Sure.
And just looking at that, it looks like it's going to back right into the bollards in front of the fueling, or it's going to have to pull out at a curve. Is that correct? There's no forward motion. And when it backs out, it's going to back straight into that dotted square and what I assume are 2 bollards in front of the gas station.
That reserve engine will be backed into the bay. So it'll be facing out and
Got
then would
it.
drive. And that's not, we need another engine. Let's get them over there with an emergency. That's a rig that if another one goes out of service, it'll just be parked there as supplemental and wouldn't be responding during an emergency. It's really just parked for
Understood.
that.
And its direction of traffic of flow, sorry, just give me 1 second, would be to actually back into that bay. And then as it pulls out, it's going to pull forward and it's really going to have to go out the in driveway on the lowest portion of the property.
So to answer your question, Member Rosenberg, that the square with the two dots,
Yes.
that is actually underground tank.
Sorry,
Is an underground fuel tank,
okay.
and they
the
can
two
pop
circles?
open to fuel.
Got
So
it,
it's not,
perfect.
it's flat on the ground.
In grade, perfect. That's
Correct.
super helpful. But the flow of that engine is going to be to come out that in driveway?
Yes.
Okay, but not in a rush. It's always going to be pretty
No,
relaxed.
it's not an
Okay,
emergency response vehicle.
got it, got
Yes.
it. Was there consideration taken that that might be a through bay as well?
So part of the scope was actually 2 apparatus bays that were drive-through and then 1 reserve bay. So there was no consideration for 3 pull-throughs.
Understood. Okay. And then again, sorry, I've got a long list here, guys. I'm sorry. Questions about just the bedrooms being on the side. I completely understand why you located them where they are. Is there any concern that that electrical substation will cause noise and or buzzing and or anything that could interfere with the sleeping of the guys and women on duty? Completely understand we're trying to get it away from the intersection. I'm just concerned that by getting it away from
Sure,
the intersection, we're
sure.
shoving it over close to the electrical substation.
The sleeping is in the back now,
Yeah.
and they're going to be a little bit closer. We're going to do a new fence. Thinking about, the getting natural light and the egress window. And then Chief, if you want to address if that's been a concern in the past.
Yeah, so the rooms are based pretty close to where we propose the new rooms to be.
Mhm.
And there's been no complaints about electrical humming or noise from the
Perfect.
substations. So
Okay.
at this time, we don't have any concerns with that.
Okay, is there, and this is again for the architects, I appreciate hearing that there's no complaints at this time. Has there been any consideration for making sure that there's sort of, I mean, maybe it's not necessary, but like a triple pane window, something like that, an extra insulation in that wall system to make sure that these guys and these men and women are sort of protected and able to sleep comfortably,
Sure.
blackout curtains, things like that. just
Sure,
to make
yeah, no,
sure-
that's a great comment. And in doing multiple fire stations, that's very often, especially when we do individual bedrooms instead of a group bunk room.
Right.
That it's got the extra sound control on the wall and windows. They are operable windows because it's an escape
Yep.
room. And then we always have both sheer and blackout curtains
Excellent,
because of their sleep patterns and schedule.
excellent,
So
okay,
we'll definitely take that into the next round of design.
excellent. And then a pretty minor question in terms of the materials. We've got 2 samples of the porcelanosa tile here. One's a lighter one, one's a darker one. Which one is the actual color you're going to plan to use?
Yeah, so the darker one is the actual color we're proposing to use, and the lighter one is for you to kind of feel the texture and how it's going to look like in a bigger panel.
And then if I'm understanding correctly, this will be the underside of the soffit eaves, this other.
That is
Yeah,
correct.
Perfect. All right. And I guess my last question would be in terms of the layout of the lobby versus the EOC training room. The lobby almost feels like it's kind of the farthest point away from either side. And now I also get that it's also at the intersection there. But it feels like when you go to visitor parking, the first space you would go is that EOC training room versus the lobby being kind of on that outer corner at this point. Was there a consideration for flip-flopping those 2 spaces and getting that lobby closer to parking? Or was the intent to have the lobby at the corner because it is sort of that intersection?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly, and that's exactly the struggle that we had is how do we balance having a somewhat convenient visitor parking, get to the lobby experience, but really weighing that against the symbol of having the entrance sort of where it is now,
Yeah,
expressing that, having kids coming and going from Little League and the park and the church. And it's a very busy intersection with kids on bikes.
yeah,
The other also is, somebody that needs 911 help. They may stop on Middlefield. They might pull into the app bay, or they may use the visitor parking. But if they're going to, we're going to call in a code, they're going to go to that main entrance and hit the 911 button that's by the door.
fair.
So, yeah, that's exactly, I don't want to call it a struggle. We saw it as an opportunity, but it was really getting that balance of, yes, we have a separate ADA parking, fully accessible, but not making it the main thing on the corner. We wanted the entrance to be the
Perfect.
primary.
Okay, fair enough. Last two questions. I will wrap this up. I apologize to my board members for hogging the microphone here today. For the captain, it's a small item, but the washing of the rigs, where is that going to take place? Are keeping them clean and, making sure that everyone's got their
Yeah, I
nice
can
shiny trucks?
answer, and that's all part of our operations review that we
Yeah.
do from the very beginning. So come home, refuel, top off the tanks and clean all in the back.
So they clean in the parking lot, not inside the bay?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless there's just some real just wipe down, but mostly
Perfect.
especially if they're coming back from a fire, then they're going to be
Beautiful.
doing the big wipe down.
And there's
that.
accommodations for washing. I'm assuming you've got hoses and things like that, and then
Yeah.
drainage as well? Just make
And
sure
like
that's all considered.
Station 3, we weren't the architects, but we've been there
Yeah.
and know the station well. It's got the supplemental system where if they're doing the wash down and it's not raining, that water goes to the sewer.
Okay.
They have a valve that turns it off. If it rains and goes into that same drain, then it goes into the storm drain. So,
Excellent. I think that's it. Thanks very much for your time.
CG.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions on the elevations. So on the north elevation, you show the deep overhang, deep roof overhang. I want to know where does it happen on the floor plan? And also it seems like the elevation, it doesn't match the floor plan. I see there are 3 narrow windows and 1 wide windows on the north elevation. And then there is still long wall space to put the signage on, but on the floor plan, I just want to make sure I understand it. Where does it happen?
So for the north elevation, just to clarify, this is the kitchen and dining area windows. So as you can see, the windows is on the floor plan right above the sink. Those are your 2 pane windows for right next to right there for the 4. And the windows that are and then the day room closer to the first row of the chairs, that's your next window. Right, the band above doesn't show because it's going to be above the window cuts.
Perhaps it's not important now, but I think your elevation is not in sync with your floor plan at the moment. Let's not worry about it though.
So for the firefighters, is there, how do they get access to their bedrooms? Is it they go through the bay and then go through the day room? That's the only way they go to the bedrooms, or?
Yes, so that's part of the safety because the rigs have a certain type of emission that you want to try to keep it away from the living quarters. So that's why the bedrooms are actually the furthest away. And sometimes the firefighters get on call at different times, and you don't want that to be near the rigs so that you don't get that privacy and that kind of quiet time for the ones that are still resting. But yes, you do have to get through the bedrooms, through the living room,
Okay,
the living
thank you.
space, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So there's been some interesting comments about the exterior circulation. We don't see any detailing of the fencing, what kind of fencing is going to be on the perimeter here. Is there a drawing that shows anything, any detail of the fencing, or are you going to, is this for a future presentation?
Not yet. But
Not yet.
if you had any advice or comments, we'd certainly, we'll write them down and make it part of our final presentation.
In terms of the materials, have you thought about that at all for the fencing?
One of the lead goals would be to recycle and reuse what we can. There's also the deconstruction requirements. There is a wood slat fence in, I'd say, medium condition right now that maybe it can be repurposed
Mhm.
between us and the substation. There's a
Okay.
there's a fence out on a middle field for the current patio that's been pretty wiped out by a couple of some bushes. So that'll probably be recycled.
Okay. The, it's a bit confusing about the other alternate machine, alternate vehicle that is held in that storage area. So could you describe a little bit more how that is going to work? Is it's going to go out the exit with the arrow that's on to East Meadow, or how would that be used? Because it's going to come out and face, just could you describe how that's going to get out of the building and function?
Thank you for asking, David. So basically what we do is we keep our reserve apparatus in there. The goal is to protect our reserve apparatus. The fire engines cost approximately $1 million. And so we keep them kept away under cover and storage, protected from the elements. When a rig breaks down in Palo Alto, that would be an opportunity where we'd be able to deploy it. It's not a what we call code 3 situation where it would be going with lights and sirens. Sometimes these things are planned events. So if it's going in for maintenance, like let's say an engine on the other side of town, they would the night beforehand go and retrieve that and then take it to the other station. So that's a coordinated event with 3 personnel that would be moving that. There'd be spotters, flaggers on the road, and it's something that's moved out very slowly. And then once the service or the maintenance is done on the other rig, it would return to the reserve bay in the same manner in a planned fashion.
So it's not an active vehicle really at all?
No.
Mhm.
But it needs to remain on the charger and protect it from the elements. And they
Mhm.
keep the vehicle fully stocked with everything to be deployed in case there was a rig to break down, that there isn't a lot of downtime having to restock an apparatus with hose, medical equipment, et cetera. So it is, it's maintained, it's checked on a weekly basis by the crews. What they'll do is they'll pull it out, they'll run it for 10 minutes or so, they'll check the pump, they'll check all the inventory, check for expirations, and then they'll back it back into that apparatus bay, close it, and it'll stay there for another week until it's rechecked or unless it's deployed for put into first line use.
So on the sort of the paving patterns around the building and the new sidewalk, et cetera, and access from parking to the access door lobby that has been discussed here, the more detailed drawings will be showing some of the paving.
Yeah, we'll have for the final, we'll have the landscape and paving plan as part of that application. As I mentioned, the big liquid amber on that corner, we had an arborist review it. It's got some very shallow roots. It's got to be handled pretty tenderly. It needs some major pruning, even now, whether or not we build a new building or not, but it'll need to be pruned back in order to work with the new design. And then the paving, we're gonna have to be very careful to keep it right on the surface because the roots of that tree are literally right on the top. If you got out and walked around, you'd be walking right on top of the roots. So, it's gonna take more study. Once we get more momentum on this meeting and your comments and move forward with some refinements, that'll be the paving and the treatment of that tree will be critical, and we'll have those details ready for the final.
I wonder if you've thought about some additional landscaping around the perimeter of the building. For example, on East Meadow, you're taking out a series of trees. Is it possible to have a bit more planting so it softens the corner of the building there?
Yeah, we haven't shown we have the planting areas. One of the other sort of aspects of this is the detention basins. We've got a report back from our civil engineer. It happened after we did the submittal that we are going to have some recessed, not retained wall detention, but just some recessed areas. So we got to integrate that into a new planting plan. But the thought is that all along East Meadow would be fully planted, still have visual access to the community room, but have a, return it to the lush frontage like it has now.
So it's low-level planting.
Yeah, it'll be low level. And then we'll also have those detention basins, which are, they just sweep down a couple of feet.
Mhm,
And then we'll integrate that with the walkway to get the public to the front door.
mhm. Is there a reason of functionality to keeping the big rear movable wall gate that is on that adjacent street access point? There's a reason for that?
Sure, we don't want the public accidentally entering into the operation zone. So
Mhm.
it'll feel most of the time, 95% of the time, that'll be closed.
Why is it ever opened?
If there's a rig that, like a non-Station 4 vehicle that's come and refueled, then it's
Okay,
always been the way that they would sweep out, close the door behind them. Back to the apparatus flow, when we showed, it's slide 2 if it's worth bringing up, but we showed those green arrows for the primary apparatus. That wasn't to confuse you, that driveway off of East Meadow for the substation, cars are coming and going out of that driveway to not only serve the substation, there's staff that work there, but also the staff that report to the station, shift change, coming and going for personal vehicles. So the driveway that's between us and the church is a two-way driveway. It always has been. It'll stay that way.
and so for paving,
Oh, it'll be paved,
mhm.
correct. And that the fence will move.
Has there been any thought on this outdoor kind of exercise area to have some landscaping there or some privacy issues there? So it's not just a part of an open kind of car access area?
Yeah, we'll drill in with the actual firefighters on staff that are going to be assigned there. There's just 2 now because of the size of the bays. It's limited to a ambulance only. But when we think ahead to who, we're going to have 2 companies there, 5 or 6 a night. Typically, we work with the station captains and firefighters. They have a design committee where we really get into the details of
Okay. Very
finishes
good.
and exactly what equipment they want and
Uh-huh.
how to buy it. There's talk, they have a basketball hoop there now. There's talk about maybe a temporary paddle
I see.
paddle
Okay.
court. So
It's a
we don't know
question
yet.
of what,
Yeah.
what it gets to be used
Yeah,
as.
I think
Okay.
that, the perimeter fencing will be planted for sure.
Mhm. Okay. And there's a similar comment about the landscape on the side that faces the electrical facility. So all of that is sort of future development for this. Just in terms of materials, there's some areas on the face of the building that are lighter in color. Do we have samples of that?
The white plaster sample?
Yeah,
No, we do not
It's
have
just a
any.
white plaster.
Just white plaster, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And public, and she will be incorporating public art. The Public Art Committee has expressed their feelings of having their art on the building surface. So we'll incorporate that once they have a decision.
Some areas, you just wonder a similar situation, indoor, outdoor kind of relationship. In the conference room, you have full height windows up from all the way from ground to as shown on exterior elevation south. On the very far left, those are full height windows all the way to the ceiling?
The clerestories or this is the front entrance,
No, not the front
Not this
entrance.
one?
I'm looking
Oh,
at
is it the next-
exterior elevation, the south elevation.
the community room. So the exterior windows there are getting further developed. The fire department did express that, for the future, that might be too much glass to maintain. So we're in the process of, in design development to kind of tone that down to be less glass.
Okay. So my concern is, in that case, it's, there isn't much to look at on the outside. So you might think about a kind of a glass that doesn't, that if you're going to have it there, it doesn't actually show the outside. It's a kind of a, well, okay, I think that, you've answered every question.
To the chair, could I ask two other questions?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be quick, please. I'd like to know about the existing fuel tank. Why is it so imperative to keep it in that location?
So the existing fuel tank is actually quite a high cost to move. If we were to, it would actually involve also additional environmental precautions because of the nature of having the fuels on site. So it is mainly a budget constraint that we're facing if we were to move it or even remove it.
If I could follow up, on most fire stations, do you put in a new fuel tank fueling facility?
So
Or do you
this
keep the-
station actually, I believe, is the only station that has a fuel station on site because the electrical substation is nearby.
For many vehicles, not just this fire station?
It's not just this fire. Yeah, so it's police, fire, utilities. It's all city vehicles that have access to that fuel station.
I see, okay. And how old is this fueling facility? Is it new or old? What kind of condition is it in?
It's, I would say it's possibly seen better conditions. There are some things that we would have to do just to ensure that it's a bit more watertight currently, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Second question has to do with the use of the training room or community room. Is that for the public to hold meetings, or is that strictly for the fire department to do training sessions? Who's going to be accessing that room? Please.
Thank you, Peter. So the training room is going to be used for both firefighters, and then there will be opportunity, I think, through the EOC. So OES is planning to set up kind of a substation on that side of town as well, to open up an EOC. And yeah, so Office of Emergency Services sets up an emergency operations center when there's an emergency in town. Currently, we have both a mobile unit and then we have an emergency operations center in this side of town. One of the strategies for OES is to have a south end zone where we could set up emergency operations in the case of a large scale disaster. So that was one of the thoughts behind having the training room there. And then obviously for firefighters and paramedics and EMTs, there's continuing education. And right now our classroom is located on Stanford campus. And so to move vehicles and have to basically shuffle units around, especially now with current times, it would be better to have a south end training area for our folks to get continuing education. So that was one of the other strategies. And then obviously for public education events, we could use that room to have the public come in and participate.
Wonderful. Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
No other questions, Chair.
Okay, I have one other myself, and that's the captain's office. Again, an issue of privacy. The window faces straight out to the street. And
Yeah, it's critical. The captain it's also called a watch commander, that they know what's going on. And if there's, like we said, an emergency, somebody's in distress, hurt, accident, they want eyes on both the lobby, how that is functioning, and
so you'd want it open so that it
Yeah.
could, okay,
they can see out. Yeah.
fine.
To follow up on that, do they also need eyes on the apparatus bay?
Not anymore. That used to be the standard. I've been doing stations for 30 years, and it used to be what was called a radio room, where they can see the apparatus responding. That's not as critical anymore. It's now more eyes on the street, front apron area, and the lobby.
Okay. And sorry, I do have one more question now that we're looking at the EOC. So if the EOC training room is also used for public, when the public needs to use a restroom, they're going to have to go through that comms alcove to the ADA restroom, but they're going to have to pass through 2 doors and the lobby to get to that restroom. Is that correct?
No.
So the comms room really that's an area for the firefighters to study what they have to do for continuing education. There's not going to be staffed 24/7. And the double doors to go through that is just in case there is someone in distress that's going to harm the firefighter in the station. They have that level of privacy and protection, so they don't just go straight into where the firefighters are going to be.
Last one, I promise. Is this an all electrical building?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks for that excellent presentation.
One last thing before we end, Valerie, I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything about any future community meetings or just kind of put that out there.
Yes, so we will be having community outreach meetings as part of our process. We will be holding them after our first formal ARB hearing. And that will be, Public Works will be doing the community outreach efforts.
Is there anyone best to reach out to?
If you have any questions or if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and contact me, Valerie Tam, by email or Matt Rashke, the project manager.
I'm sorry, you're not holding public meetings till after the first architecture board hearing, the public outreach? Is that the plan?
Yes, that is the plan. We are doing a similar process with from Fire Station 3.
I didn't understand you there. You're doing,
We're holding a similar process as we did for Fire Station 3.
I see, and that worked out okay. It seems to me the community often wants to get involved sooner. And by the time they've put together their formal package, a lot of decisions have been made about big things like street entrances and stuff and trees. Has that worked well for the other stations?
To my knowledge, yes, it actually has worked well for Fire Station 3.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we'll bring it back to the board if there are any more detailed. I don't think there'll be any additional questions at this point, but we'll perhaps have some additional comments about the project. But that's been a rather detailed and fantastic kind of presentation on all of the operations. And so let's see what our board has to say. Who would like to start? Peter?
Sure. Overall, it's an excellent proposal, I think, and in my mind, very, very close to meeting our required findings. So hats off to you. I think it's a good design. There's a number of things, however, I'd like to encourage you to consider and think about. And I'll start off with the site planning. I think the building location is good. It's good to be on the corner. I think you should be orienting towards the corner with the public entrance. I fully understand why you want to approach Middlefield Avenue, and your responses about the traffic control made sense to me. You have no impact on residential neighboring properties, which is good. It's often an issue. I think your vehicle access and planning seems to work out well. My concerns, though, regarding the site planning is really that I think you're overly constrained by the existing fuel tank. That prevents you from shifting the entrance off of Middlefield further from the building and allowing the parking to be closer to the building, which would make much more sense. Any visitor coming to get to the lobby now has to traverse that drive aisle. The vehicle access coming in and out of the building is significantly constrained. I really encourage Public Works to think strongly. You're spending millions to build this building. To constrain it by the cost of relocating the fuel tank seems poorly thought out, especially when it may not be in the best of shape. I'll be willing to bet that by the time you finish the project, it's going to need more work than you think. It's generally better when we're building buildings that will last 50 and 100 years. Bite the bullet, put the fueling station where it needs to be. I think that's doubly true given that other agencies in the city will be using that. And it's just not the ideal location for that. I would think the architects would gladly tell you that there's better circulation patterns that could be developed if you let that fueling thing move. So that's my single comment about the site planning. Once you move that fueling station, a lot of other things will open up. The building massing has a low-key residential form that's extremely comfortably fitting into the neighborhood. It's a nod to the Eichler design motif, and that's all quite appropriate. It really, that's what Palo Alto is. I'm saying that halfway tongue in cheek because I'm really dismayed that you're not doing building. It's not a house. Right now, it looks like a fancy residence, a little bit larger on steroids, but boy, does it look like an Eichler. And I'd like to think a fire station could look like a fire station, look like some important civic part of our community. And right now, it doesn't. It looks like a house. And I don't know how to put that, what to do about that, but I think some of the decisions you've made are perhaps you're feeling too constrained by the Palo Alto process, by wanting to make everybody happy. And what I want to see is you architects doing architecture. Do something that's of our time, not 50 years ago, not just to match the neighborhood, especially on a corner on Middlefield and East Meadow. There's no houses in sight. I don't think the community expects it to match a house. So I'd love to see you take it another notch. Give it broader roof overhangs, more vertical components. I'm not so sure about the wood siding material. So I think looking at the massing, though, the entrance corners where you need the most adjustment, perhaps, that the roof overhang is flush over the entrance lobby and it could cantilever quite a bit out. I think it's a shame that you don't have corner glazing at the lobby so you can see the actual intersection of Middlefield and East Meadow. Right now, you're blocked from actually seeing the intersection. And the same applies to the training or community room, that you have sort of a solid wall preventing you from looking at the street. And it's that eyes on the street, that pedestrian connectivity that makes a lobby or a training room more successful. At least the opportunity to have that or control it. Right now, there's just no windows going there. So I'd love to see you think about that connectivity at those two corners. Then on the materials for the building, again, I can't fault them. It's very correct to use a solid material like porcelain tiles that'll last a long time. But I'm really bothered by getting a printed tile that looks like wood. If you can't make it wood, then use something that looks like what it is. And the Trespa is more attractive perhaps because it comes in panels that are like wood panels. But even then, there's so many other materials that are of our time. And it just feels like you're literally interpreting an Eichler house. And I think you can do more than that. So I'm really not too keen on the printed tile on the finish. Then I'm going to throw out two big questions, and this is nothing the architects can answer on, but one to the city. This is a large site, and we're putting a fire station that this is a single-story building. Is this really the best use of this land? Could we make the station taller and denser and get other functions going on here? Have we really thought about that? So, it's not for us to say this building meets our findings for the most part. But it feels to me, again, this is just a throwback to suburban development in Palo Alto when everything else we're doing in town is denser, taller, and this is not. Lastly, to the Public Works Department, I really encourage you to take public input sooner. Over and over again, people are frustrated because they make the effort to come to these meetings and nothing happens. They make comments, but at this point, the comments I'm making have been baked in. The decisions are made. It doesn't matter what people say. Take the effort to ask now. You've got a set of plans. People can give you good feedback. Just go for it. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. I think considering the existing conditions, I think the site plan, the circulation really well sorted. And considering the massing, the forms of the building, I think it's compatible to the neighborhood. It has the Eichler feeling, and I understand what my colleagues concern, like this would be a building last for 50, 100 years. However, I think the style of the building and the materials still apply to this building. I think it's appropriate to this location, and I can feel this fire station just belong to here. And I think the scale of the building is appropriate, and I can see there are lots of schools nearby, and kids just walk along the street, and then they can. I think the scale is pedestrian friendly, and also it's modern looking. Overall, I think it's really a successful design. But for the next submittal, I'd like to see more developed landscape design, including like where the hardscape are and also the sidewalks, and also are there any new plantings? Also, I think you need to double check your floor plan that matches your elevations, because like on your elevation, you show the sign, the fire station sign on the wall, but I'm not sure where it happens on the floor plan. Is it on the fence or is it on the building? So please double check your drawings and make sure it matches each other. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Again, thank you for the presentation and thank you to the fire chief for coming in and providing your input as well. A building like this, first and foremost, has to be functional. So as much as we are here to critique the design and the aesthetic and the material, if this building doesn't function, it doesn't, none of the rest of it matters. So as long as function is number one on this project, we're in good shape. I would agree with Commissioner Peters' comments about the fuel tank. It feels a little bit like the tail wagging the dog here, where this is a significant investment of time, effort, resources to be sort of pivoting around one fuel tank that may or may not be in the best shape. Really big picture looking out, I think that that's a very critical item to better tackle early because it will affect everything. It'll affect circulation, it'll affect the design layout, it'll affect everything. So whichever way you decide to go on that, I think that is well worth the time and effort to investigate thoroughly now. That being said, I agree that the building looks like an Eichler. That was actually one of my notes that I wrote to myself when I was reviewing the packet, as I was like, oh, and seeing the different roof iterations that you had gone through. We didn't really talk about that earlier, but we noticed that you guys had gone through several roof iterations, several massing items. I think that it is extremely appropriate for the residential neighborhood. I think that it's a nice massing. I like a single story building, but I also agree that it's an opportunity not taken. You could go bigger, you could go bolder, you could go more modern, more stark, more interesting, more architectural. Now, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the design as it is. It's a good design. Is it a great design? That's the question. To get nitpicky, I think that the lobby where it is, I like the location. I agree that having it be more glass to the full intersection would be ideal. I think it's a little bit proportionally maybe small. Maybe you could enlarge that a little bit and emphasize it more. When we're looking at the exterior elevations, the massing, that entrance at the corner is actually a little bit lost. Now, understandably, you don't want to fight with the massiveness and grandness of the rig bay, but there could be a little bit more pop at that entrance, especially if that's where you're going to try and get people to wayfind their way into the building. So it's a small item, but I would definitely put a little bit more oomph in the lobby. Exercise room, just conceptually, I think it's really cool if there's a garage door there that these guys can get in and out and do their CrossFit, just really open the whole side of that room and really allow that to spill out, truly being an indoor-outdoor space. Kitchen dining, again, sort of a similar thought that maybe there's some outdoor dining for the guys and that they can really, I say guys, I mean all firefighters, that there's really sort of an outdoor space there as well. It's really getting that indoor-outdoor flow would be nice. I do love also that you guys sort of worked with the property angles. It's a unique opportunity to make these sort of angled shapes and something a little bit more interesting. So I do appreciate that you're sort of following those and not making this just a box stuck there. So kudos for a good presentation. Thank you for your time and efforts and looking forward to seeing it come back.
Well, thank the board. I think they've had some very astute comments about the design of the building. In terms of where it all came from, it seems to me it derived very well out of the planning concept and where things ought to be on the site. And you've certainly utilized the site very, very well in this organization of the functional aspects of the building, but you let them take control of everything else. So all of the comments that have been made concerning the drama of this corner, yeah, it really is an important corner, a very important corner. I mean, after all, there are two major streets in the city here. So it would be a shame to not take advantage of that opportunity to make something of a stronger design. Really, the forms are kind of a response to the use of the spaces, but there's no reason why you have to emulate the Eichler, in my opinion, that really the building could take a shape of its own, and the massing could be a variety of cubistic kind of elements that make that corner more interesting. The last comment about the lobby room turning the corner and making more out of that corner aspect of it, I think would help in that regard, turning the corner and detailing and glass and making it more of an outdoor welcoming space in some way would improve it. So it's not just kind of one directional. And then it turns the corner to become the same as what the rest of the corner is going to be like with clear story glass. Even if it's a solid wall, it's just made up of the elevational kind of decision there. And perhaps that if it changed and became a glassy corner would be more effective as a lobby. I personally don't think that the issue of the fuel tank storage, if you know it's in very good condition, and of course it involves the tank in the ground and potentially erosion of that tank, you wouldn't want it to be needing replacement at any time soon for it to have the same life as the building as it progresses, into the future here. So I think it's a serious question, but it's a question which you yourselves can determine from both the functionality of the vehicles that are coming there and the question of the capability of that tank to last as long as the building will last. Tank and pumps, et cetera. I think the comments made about the landscaping around the building still need work, more detailed. We look to that in the future. I think you're mostly on a good track in that, and what are blanks on the drawing will be filled in the next presentation. But I guess I would, you look at the issue of access to the street, and I know that your firefighters have kind of worked that out in the past because that's where it is now, so it has to work. And there's limitations on what you can do to make that an easy access out to two major streets, almost right at the corner there. So if you've known it worked in the past, I guess it's going to have to continue, and we cross our fingers and hope that, everything will work out for you for that. Presumably, there's something that you do with the lights, et cetera, to get the traffic out of your way. I don't know how you do it, but you've worked it out, I'm sure. These are very wonderful big vehicles that you put into a storage room. And so that space becomes something very, very special. And you'd have a much stronger feel with a light penetrating that area. And that's been certainly mentioned by others here. So I would think that's the place that you're really going to have to cubistically make an expression for this building that does stand out. Sort of in comparison to the award-winning other firehouse that we've been admiring, This is different because the planning of it has been able to spread out in a single story. But I think you really must take the opportunity to make a better statement out of it architecturally. It will lead to somewhat different kind of detailing. So, but I'm encouraged very much by the planning, which I think is very successful. And the idea of just simply overhangs to kind of make it Eichler-like, I question whether that's really so important as the expression of a new type of firehouse at this corner. So we look forward to some second application here so that we could see how you might do the design of it otherwise. Thank you very much, though. Good try on this effort. Appreciate the planning. Anything else?
Chair, do
Maybe
you
ask the
want to ask the applicant if they'd like to ask any questions?
Would you like to ask anything from us?
I was just chatting with the chief. I forgot the term opticom. So the rigs have what's called an opticom system that when it turns and faces the light, it turns it green. So there, it's back. Yeah, no, we're listening. We're taking notes. Chris Sano, our design director, is listening in, and we've got this all on record. I take to heart the comments about the lobby, keeping in mind, like I talked about the legacy tree and its survivability. To be quite honest, is it going to survive this process? Our arborist said it may be time to say goodbye to that tree. It may not. Why design around it and then have it not make it anyway? I don't want to be the one to make that call. I understand. We'll go back and look at some of those comments and take it to heart. I appreciate the care and the advice. I really do appreciate it. Megan, sounded like we had one comment on the, with the wood, the idea of like, they like the idea of the wood, don't like the idea of maintaining the wood. Commissioner Peter was the only one that objected to that. We can explore, maybe at the next presentation, we could explore some alternatives after I confer with the client, the owner.
I would like to support our vice chair's comment about wood that isn't wood.
Wood that isn't wood, okay.
To my colleagues, this is the kind of issue that I raised now, and if we don't speak up, it's not fair to raise later. So I've heard only one, now David mentioned in another opinion about it, but the point of us being here is to tell them what you think about these things.
Sure. And for the, just to throw a little wrench in, I actually quite like it. So there's always going to be some disagreement. And that's the difficult part for you as the architect to try and navigate, is that there will be moments where wood that looks like wood but isn't wood, doesn't feel right. For me personally, I think that it's actually quite interesting to have a fire station be wood clad, but using a fire retardant material. So there's something there that I find intriguing. So again, but that's one opinion of 5, right? And this is, I think that it's a beautiful material. I think that it's compliant with our Palo Alto standards for how it looks and how it will maintain and how it will hold up over time. If you actually came with real wood, I'd say we have a problem because the maintenance on that is a nightmare. So I think this is a very clever solution, but that's only one of 5.
Yeah, I would support the wood feeling as well. I think it matches the neighborhood, and compared to the buildings nearby, they're all wood materials. I think it's appropriate to bring some wood feelings to this building.
Take it one step further here. And we don't have a 5th member here. She's ill today, I'm sorry to say, because she definitely would have an opinion about the materials. But somehow the transition to a more modern building leads you to think about that material, because all of a sudden if the material, if the design of the building, the forms of the building change, as I keep using the word, a cubistic kind of way of dealing with this building rather than the Eichler way of dealing with it, then a number of things change, and the choice of materials might change with it. You know, you simply wouldn't have a material that doesn't kind of represent the design concept that you have ultimately. It's kind of cladding a plan that really works very well at this point, but it needs more study. The whole of the corner, that corner as an important corner, as Vice Chair Belte mentioned, it's really a very important corner in the city here, very important. You know, we have the library, you know, that very dominant building a little further down, but this one isn't still, it's an important area. And I'm just confident that you can do a bit more with this whole building to be a sort of a spokesman for the fire department, which has already done a great job in one fire department building. So you look forward to this one. I don't want to extend this discussion except to say that it seems to me there's a relationship between your choice of materials and what the final design might be. Thank you very much.
So I realized in the mix up with the microphones, we actually skipped forward to the city official reports without taking action on item number 1. So if we could return back to item number 1, adoption of a resolution for teleconferencing.
I'll move the staff report for item 1. Somebody has a second.
Sorry, I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
You want to take a roll?
Yes, Vice Chair Belte,
Yes.
Board Member Chen.
Yes.
Chair Hirsch.
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
So there was a procedures or part of the book.
So moving down to action item 4,
Mhm,
it's a review and adoption of the revised bylaws.
mhm.
So I don't have a formal presentation on this, but I think we've had strikeout underline of the current bylaws provided in the staff report. Is there anything, if there's anything in particular, we want to just start with questions for staff or?
Can we bring the staff report up on the screen
Yeah,
just for visual?
Can we? Sure, if you could. that'd be helpful. Would it be helpful for me to give a quick summary again? Sure, of course. So as we discussed on November 17th of last year, there are new changes that came into effect January 1st, 2023 with respect to the Brown Act. The Brown Act has always allowed teleconferencing with certain standard requirements for noticing. These include some fairly strict requirements, including things like opening up, the location where you are to the public, having that location be ADA accessible, providing proper notice to the public of that location, et cetera. And those items are outlined in detail in the staff report, and as well as under the standard remote procedures in the bylaws that's part of the proposed language. So under the state law, you can do that as many times as you'd like for, but following council's, what they've adopted for the council, staff was proposing limiting that to 5 total allowances for remote attendance using those additional standard notification procedures. Separately from that, there are allowances without having to do the additional noticing requirements under the new laws that came into effect that allow for, we've worked out that it's a total of 4 meetings, 20% of the meetings for the Architectural Review Board that you can attend under just cause or emergency circumstances. And those don't require some of the additional noticing requirements or opening up the location where you are to the public. However, they are very limited in terms of what constitutes just cause or emergency circumstances. And those are outlined under the new bylaws under section 4 of the bylaws. So with that, I don't know if you want to start by just opening it up to questions, perhaps.
Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Claire, for that summary. I'm really trying hard to understand what latitude we have to go beyond or different than some of these procedures. Not standard remote, but what's the other term? If the board wanted to allow someone to attend a meeting remotely, not for just cause or emergency, do we have the latitude to allow that?
You have the latitude to allow that. However, we have to provide the proper noticing under the standard remote procedures.
I'm saying if we don't want, the standard remote procedures are a non-starter. There's none of us who could do that.
So there is no flexibility in that.
So
then.
we're not able to just say somebody could miss 3 meetings for work-related reasons, say they're traveling for work.
They
their
they can miss the meetings, but if they wanted to
remotely.
travel for work and be remote and not use the standard remote procedures, that would not constitute just says state or city or something.
So we're required to follow this AB 2449 standard pretty tightly,
Correct.
actually.
Yes.
Okay, fine. And could you explain what the city council is trying to do by letting us figure this out ourselves? I mean, it seems very carefully prescribed here. Why are we doing this?
So there's not a lot of flexibility in these. What council is providing flexibility on is not in the remote attendance in compliance with AB 2449 under these just cause or emergency circumstances. Those are pretty tight. What they're allowing other flexibility is if somebody wanted to follow all of the standard noticing procedures and be remote more often, boards could decide to allow for that.
Okay, and they didn't think to put this in the boards and commissions handbook as a whole instead, just across the city? This is really their intention that every board and commission should be.
It is
doing this?
really their intention that they wanted to encourage attendance in person, but they wanted to allow for the flexibility of each board and commission to make its own determinations in terms of how many times you could attend remotely, not under just cause or emergency circumstances.
Okay, thanks for answering the question.
You have any questions, Kendra? Or Yep, nope,
No, no question.
here, that's it.
Can I jump right in then, David, or?
Sure.
Yeah, I have to be frank. I think this is ridiculous. We have 3 pages of bylaws and we're now doubling that to 6 with detailed arcane rules that none of us could actually follow. This standard attendance thing is just a non-starter. Why are we putting this in our bylaws? Why are we asking every board and commission to do the same? Makes no sense. I just can't support changing the bylaws to this level of detail when that's not the intent or the purpose of bylaws. It's not what we're supposed to do. And, once we do this, we could do this on a dozen different issues. The AB 42449 policy allows a person to attend remotely by sick leave. I should think you could just put that in one sentence in the bylaws. You can follow AB 2449. It's still pretty restrictive. It's basically a sick day pass if you really want to come, like Ozma Thompson today, if she felt up to it, but she's sick. She doesn't, obviously. I just don't get why this is in front of us now, why we're doing this, why we're asking every board and commission to spend our time doing this, and most of all, why we would clutter up our bylaws with this kind of stuff. So I can't support this as it's drafted now, and I think it's frankly ridiculous. Thank you.
Well, let's hear a little bit more from staff in this case. Why is it important for us to have this detail?
So I think we've been advised by the attorneys to, put this language into the bylaws. Could it be in a separate internal document, some of the details? We could certainly go back and talk to the attorneys about that. There's also the potential that if the ARB is never going to use the standard remote attendance procedures, then maybe we just don't allow that. And that would, it would help staff a lot. We wouldn't have to, do all of this crazy noticing. So we can certainly take that part out. I think then the second version, the 2449, only allows for 4 meetings to be remote. And so we would just say that you could be remote for 4 meetings under the 2449, and that would certainly cut the information in half. And we can go from there I'd love to hear comments.
Now, if I'm remembering correctly, this standard remote attendance, so it says standard remote attendance or the remote attendance, the 2 different methods. To post a notice on your door of your hotel room and invite people to come into your hotel room.
Correct.
Like Commissioner Balthe said, that's a non-starter for pretty much. I hate to speak on behalf of the board, but I'm pretty sure nobody's going to do that. If I also remember, we were trying to make sure that this was sort of a fair way to get absences in and to encourage attendance remotely versus just saying, I'm sick, I'm out, right? That the hope would be that if you are not available physically, that you could at least be available intellectually, right, via Zoom. I'm not necessarily seeing that this is actually doing anything to help that. So that's sort of where my sort of hesitation comes in, is I don't feel like this is actually helping to get us online versus just skipping the meeting altogether.
Let me state to you, Kendra, Section C of standard remote attendance requires the board member at the beginning of the board meeting to state that the location is publicly accessible, that you're meeting ADA requirements. There's not an architect in the world who would do that. I mean, you're requiring me to certify that the hotel I'm in meets ADA?
Right.
Come on.
My office is not ADA
My insurance
compliant. Up a
policy
flight of
won't drop
stairs.
me if I do that.
Right.
I mean, this is just a non-starter.
Okay, so I think we've established that the standard remote attendance procedures are not going to work for the ARB. And I mean, but that's the law, but if we don't want to take advantage of it, that's certainly fine. So then let's focus our energy on the AB 2449 remote attendance. That does allow you to attend remotely. You do have to have just cause or emergency situations. So you can discuss that further if you'd like.
Well, it seems like a sort of a non-starter to me, that if you're remote, who the hell is going to come to some Cleveland or Ohio and on the meeting that has to do with something in Palo Alto.
So I think that we've heard that from you, and so we don't have to include the standard remote procedures if you do not ever intend to use them. But as Ms. Gerhart mentioned, let's maybe focus then on the remote attendance procedures under AB 2449. This is going to allow you 4 total meetings, but it needs to fall under that just cause or emergency circumstances. So for example, today, Board Member Ozma, Board Member Thompson couldn't be here. If that was a contagious illness and she wanted to participate remotely, she could notify that. And there's a set of standards that we still need to provide in terms of noticing at the beginning of that hearing that she was participating remotely under just cause. But it'll be limited to 4 total meetings in the calendar year.
So can I ask the question, what happens if somebody gets ill for 4 different meetings?
Sorry, if somebody gets ill before a meeting?
Yeah, well, what happens if, circumstances beyond their control leads to the fact that they just can't meet this standard?
So we have on your screen the legal reasons why you could be remote. So this is in number 4 under the AB 2449, and it's either just cause or emergency situations. And so if you are ill, but still, able to think clearly, then you could certainly attend the hearing under this clause here. It does not have, the law does not talk about if you miss the train or something of that nature, that's not considered to be just cause. But, maybe you miss the train and you're ill. There could be things of that nature. So.
Last night. My conclusion was that I would really like to be able to say to board members, you could miss, say, up to 3 meetings, essentially for just cause, emergency circumstance, or something similar to that on your own discretion. I think we're all practicing professionals, and having the ability to once in a while attend remotely instead is really valuable, and it will serve the board well to allow board members occasionally to do that. I understand that the law seems to constrain us. I wonder sometimes if the city council, for example, were to agree with this and pass some ordinance, would that be allowed? Are we being so cognizant of what the state rule says without trying to think of what's really a practical solution? Or does the ARB have any ability to just recommend back to council, this is what we think would work for us?
They can't adopt an ordinance that wouldn't comply with the Brown Act.
And that's what it comes down to, complying with the Brown Act.
Yes.
Yeah, so my opinion is we should be allowed to miss up to 3 meetings, not miss, attend remotely up to 3 meetings at our own discretion. But I understand that's violation with the Brown Act, perhaps. But
Maybe this is one of those kind of rulings that you simply pass it and move on. Don't make a lot of fuss about it.
why does it need to be in the bylaws then? It's already a state law. What's the purpose of us putting it in bylaws?
Because the Brown Act asked for it to be there.
Does the bylaws say we have to follow the Brown Act?
We can ask the attorney if there's a different way to convey the details. But I think we certainly want to put in the bylaws, that people can miss up to 4 meetings for just cause or emergency situations in accordance with, AB 2449. We want to at least have at least one sentence, related to that.
Sure, whatever the staff thinks is right, I'll be able to support. But I think it's just too much as it's presented.
Probably these kind of legal matters are always too much. So maybe we should just move on.
I'm sorry, David, but there's nothing in the bylaws that says we have to follow the Brown Act. The Brown Act is a state law that we have to follow because we follow state law. The purpose of the bylaws is not to say follow state law. It's to establish procedures for running our board. If we don't intend to do anything different than the state law, why does it need to be here whatsoever? So I move that we request the city attorney to revisit changes to the bylaws based on our comments.
Fair enough.
Second.
So
Could we take a vote on that?
Did I hear a second?
Second, yes, down there. I'll second then. Beat you to it, yeah.
Vice Chair Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Can you, oh, okay. Here.
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes,
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Vice Chair Balte, can I have you just say again the motion?
I have moved and it's been voted that we request the city attorney to revise changes to our bylaws based on the comments that we've made.
can I ask for clarification? Is the intent then to amend the bylaws to council has asked each board and commission to amend their bylaws to comply with the Brown Act. So is the intent to work with the attorney and come back with potentially the bylaws, or is your request to not include anything in the bylaws?
Well, I think they have to make a more consolidated version of this thing the council's asking us to do. I don't think we want to pick a fight with council over this. As Chair Hirsch said, we just want to get it done. I think all of us felt that this was too much and the standard conditions don't apply to our board. So it shouldn't be here at all. And perhaps the other part can just be a reference to state law.
And I think to better understand if we do need an extra amount of detail, where that can go versus being specifically in the bylaws.
I think we could make that work, do a one line kind of thing and have a separate document. I think that could probably.
Okay, and I promise to be nicer next time about it.
I think staff is going to need to treat this though as a continuance so that we would come back to you with whatever that final language is.
The motion was intended to be a continuing.
Okay,
motion, yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
so let's move on to the minutes. So have, the first one is, let's see. Attachment, a December 15th meeting. Any comments on that meeting? Okay. Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I had no comments for the meeting minutes.
Okay. Same? Yeah.
Move to approve the minutes from February 16th.
I second.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's the wrong date. It's from December 15th.
Second.
All those in favor,
Aye. Yes.
please take a roll.
Okay. Vice Chair Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes,
Board Member Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
meeting of February 16th then. Oh, no.
Sorry, I think we have board member questions, comments. I know I have a couple quick items. Board Member Thompson is supposed to be on the ad hoc today and is absent due to illness. Can we possibly assign somebody else to the ad hoc items for today? I know Chair Hirsch is the other ad hoc committee member.
Well, we have a project that was reviewed before our new members here, so we would prefer to have, yes, he's agreed.
Okay.
Peter will do that.
Thank you. And I just had a question about sizes of the plan set. I know Chair Hirsch has expressed to me that the smaller plan sets are a little bit harder to see. So we can certainly request larger plan sets. We just want to be clear with applicants about any plan sets that we're providing for the hearing. So I just wanted to ask if people are happy with the smaller plan sets. Chair Hirsch, if you would like to receive larger plan sets, we can certainly ask for that for all of our items. One plan set and smaller for other board members, however you see fit.
Well, we could have a little bit of a discussion about it, but I find that, for example, reading for this particular review of the San Antonio Road project in plan set is difficult. Now, once it's up on the board here, maybe it's easier once we're in this meeting, but as we come to a particular situation that we're in here, I'm not entirely happy at the way it appears in the smaller set. Peter does agree. Can we agree that it would either be presented to us on the big screen in the ad hoc, or that we get a full set of drawings, or both possibly?
It might.
Or should we, when we get a project that's like this for review, should we get a full set at home, or wherever we review the project? So is there some comment about that? What do you feel? And Peter in particular, because this project is very big.
Well, I've been bothered on occasion by the plans being too small. Traditionally, what we've done is allowed board members to request a full-size set. And the onus is on the board member to notify staff that that's what you need or want. I've become more comfortable with the smaller sets because it's all available digitally, and my life is in front of a screen now. And I'm cognizant of not wanting to waste paper, and it clutters up my office having all these plan sets. So I think it's fair to say that board members can ask for larger sets if they want. What might make sense is to let applicants know that when they take a full-size set of drawings and reduce it, and they've already made their elevations very tight, you can't really read it, and it's not to their advantage. Does that answer what you're asking, David? That remember with Winfirth, she always wanted large drawing sets. So she just asked for them and they would give her these big piles of drawings. Jody would.
So, and we had also started with when she made a very good comment that even at the reduced size, the notes on the plans should still be legible. And so architects do have to make some sort of adjustments to make that happen. So we've tried to let, applicants know that over time.
I would,
But I think you're right, is that, this is something that we can just sort of take offline. Individual board members can let us know what they need, and then we can let the architects know accordingly.
So we get our drawing set a week in advance, right? Is that enough time to get an additional drawing set?
well, I think it's fair for a board member just to let the staff know on a regular basis, I want larger scale or smaller scale drawings. So then the drawings are printed out at least a month in advance, I'm sure. And the applicant would need time.
Mhm.
But I know as an applicant, if that's what they say to do, I just do that. It's not a big deal. The print shop makes them. I know staff tells me that sometimes my reduced drawings don't work because they're too illegible. And usually that's a staff rejection of our drawings. We have to fix it. I hope that's what happens.
And I would gently also argue that, in the past, 15 years of working in this industry, we've always had to be aware that your plans will end up at half size at some point. It's nothing new. Like there's nobody's surprised that the drawings need to be legible at a half size print. 8.5 by 11, okay, yeah, that's a little bit onerous, but half size sets, they should always be legible. That's just sort of standard issue, at least as far as any firm that I've ever worked at. And that also being said, I prefer the small size. I like to be able to take notes on them. I like to have them on the desk with me here. It is very helpful to see them on the large screen, but for me personally, I think the small size sets work great. They save paper, everything is available digitally. I think that if David, for example, if we know that you're gonna always want the big size set, they just plan for that and they drop off a big size set to you. And, for the rest of us as needed, we can just ping and say, we need a big size set for this specific project.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Just keep it the flexible.
Flexible?
Yeah.
Okay, so each board member will request what they
Sure.
want specifically.
I would also, sorry, Peter, I would also say that, maybe we do place a little bit more emphasis when we're talking to the applicant to say, these will be viewed at half size. If you need to add, zoom in sheets or extra sheets, because this isn't a construction document set. This is a ARB review plan set, right? So as long as they're aware of that, they can should solve a lot of problems.
Okay,
thank you.
that's how we'll resolve individually between board members and staff on each project. But I would just like to say that for me, actually, the larger projects, the projects that are really larger, that either they focus on some of the detail that they're thinking about in their presentation and not leave it up to us to say, well, it's not big enough, that has to go out to the applicant, early enough so that they can develop those kind of drawings. And
So, and Chair, if I may, if there are specific details that you're always wanting, maybe it's the window or windows inset, kind of detail, corners of buildings with materials. If there's things like that that you always want to see, then we should be putting that in our checklist.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that all applicants provide that sort of thing. And so maybe what Claire can do is send out the major ARB checklist to the board members,
That'd be good.
and you can see what's on there, what we're asking for, and we can discuss if additional things are needed.
Okay. That's, that would do the trick. So I think we're have a motion to, well, I can just adjourn. We can adjourn.